So tonight, we're going to have what is called an expository word. We're going to study a little bit about the Word of God. I've been blessed. I'm also an associate pastor going to the church, and I'm a Sunday school teacher. But I didn't want to hit you with I prepare a Sunday school lesson every Sunday. It goes real deep into Scripture. I'm not going to hit you with all of that because we have a message tonight. So if you'd be so kind, let's turn to Revelation 22. You should have no problem finding that book. Revelation, okay. It's not tricky, it's not in the middle. Revelation 22, verse 14. That's where we're going to start tonight. Now, life in this world, we have tough times, and we have good times, and we have difficult things to do. But I want everybody to know that God has a plan for us. And not only does He have a plan for what's going on tomorrow, next week, and next year, but He's also got a plan for eternity. Now, life in this world got pretty tough back in Genesis. We fell, as mankind fell into sin. But in Revelation, we're going to take a look at how things were in Genesis and how they've been resolved. Revelation, remember? So Revelation 22, verse 14. And it reads, "Blessed are those who do His commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter into the gates into the city." Amen? Revelation 22:14. Now the rewards mentioned here are for faithful service as Christ's stewards. And we can find a mention of that in Matthew 25 and 21. And this is something I want to hear. I know this is something you want to hear. Matthew 25 and 21, and it reads, "His Lord said unto him, Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Thou hast been faithful over a few things, I will make thee ruler over many things. Enter thou into the joy of thy Lord." Now, I don't know about you, but some people have this idea about heaven, that we're going to be flying around up there playing harps all day, or floating on the clouds, right? But that's not what's going to happen. See, we're going to be in a place that God has created specifically for us. The way it was before sin entered the world. Because there will be no sin in heaven. That's why we have to have Christ to take away our sins. Because the Heavenly Father and this place that God is preparing for us is incompatible with sin. So there'll be none. And because there will be no sin, there will be no curses. That's why it says there will be no sorrow, there will be no crying, there will be no sickness, there will be no death, there will be no mourning, there will be none of that stuff. Amen?
Amen.
So, I'm just going to read a couple of scriptures in Revelation, and then we're going to get into really taking a deep look at Revelation 22 and 14, okay? So, Revelation 1:8 reads, "I am Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the ending, saith the Lord, which is, and which was, and which is to come, the Almighty." Now, the reason why this is important, or another way of thinking about it, if you haven't already, is that God created time. Time is something that we need. We're created to live in time. We have yesterdays. Tomorrow's not promised, but we look forward to tomorrows, right? God is not He's not controlled by things He created. God doesn't create this thing and then all of a sudden He's subject to it. So another way of saying that is God is outside of time. That's how come He can see everything. Because He's not even, like, time is over here and God is over here. It doesn't matter to Him. But we live in time. Amen? That's the way we are. So, let's take a look at this. The last 3 chapters of Revelation correspond with the first 3 chapters of Genesis. Okay? Creation, Genesis, right? And new creation. And we'll get into this a little deeper. The paradise of man, the Garden of Eden, and the paradise of God. And as we all know, paradise lost, right? And paradise regained again. Man expelled from paradise, and man brought back into paradise. This 14th verse fits in with the 24th verse, Genesis. Let's look at the parts. The city, number 1, right? It says here, that they may enter through the gates into the city, right? That's the B part of Revelation 22:14, right? The city is a new Jerusalem. At the first creation, there was no city. There was only a garden with one man in it. Now there is a city in the midst of the garden, and the citizens are the multitude that no man can number. Right? This city is a glorious city. See, God's got a plan for you, but we gotta remember about blessed are those who do His commandments, right? You're not going to get there unless you get this blessing that we're talking about, right? So this well-watered, well-founded, well-paid, well-lighted, altogether perfect city, God has prepared for them a city which has its foundations, whose builder and maker of it is God. Now we can make some pretty fantastic things, but you take a look at the things that God has made, no comparison. Not only that, the things we make out of things that we find. You know, if we're framing a house, or we use wood, we use things that God made. But God made everything from nothing. And He made a city for you and me. The believer who holds on and stands strong, right? Let's take a look at the gates, number 2. Gates, right? What does it say? Oh, it says, they may enter through the gates into the city, right? That's part of Revelation 22:14, right? Gates. These gates are 12, each one a pearl. These gates are for redeemed men to enter by. These gates are never shut. These gates are for both men, women, and angels, which lead to the palace of the King, through which the sons of the second Adam can enter into the New Jerusalem. These gates are made by God's own hand. They are the everlasting gates of doors sung by David. David has this, at which the King of glory enters. They're the gates through which there are abundant entrance into the everlasting kingdom. These gates are no longer narrow, but they're wide. It's not difficult or painful or any other way to get into it, right? These gates are pleasant. These gates are glorious. These gates are divine. They're divine gates of a divine city, in the middle of which is the palace of the King. Take a look at the tree, right? It says here, blessed are those who do His commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life. Take a look at the tree, right? This is the tree of life spoken of in Genesis, also especially noted in the promise to the church of Ephesus. It is the life-giving tree, not only now in the midst of the earthly paradise, but the paradise of God. The earthly paradise, right? Before they get kicked out, right? Not only in the midst of paradise, but in the midst of the city, for Jerusalem and paradise will be one. Of course, include the scripture here talking about the tree of life, so we have a better understanding. We're going to go to Genesis 2:9. And out of the ground made the Lord to grow every tree that is pleasant to the sight and good for food, the tree of life, also in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. You don't have to miss that one. Right? Genesis 3:22. And the Lord said, behold, the man has become as one of us, to know good and evil. Now, lest he put forth his hand and also take the tree of life and eat and live forever. That's why God put them out of the Garden of Eden, so they couldn't take the tree of life, right? And then 3:24, so he drove out the man and placed to the east of the garden cherubims. Those are angels, certain types. Right? And a flaming sword which turned every way to keep the way of the tree of life. Right? Now, Revelation 2:7. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith to the churches. To him that overcometh, I will give to eat of the tree of life, which is in the midst of the paradise of God. When you get to that tree, you're going to be in paradise. Amen? Amen. That's good. That's good, right? And then Revelation 22:2, in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river, there was a tree of life, which bare 12 manner of fruits, and yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. There'll be no war. Right? I don't know about you, I grew up a long time ago. We used to have these things where they'd have these drills where we'd climb underneath our desks. They were basically drills for, like, if you got hit with an atomic bomb. I think it was just to kind of like calm the children so they're all in one place as the building got blown up. I mean, you know, I lived in New York City. I figured that's maybe on the target of somebody, you know. War's a horrible thing. And Satan is a 20-year-old. There'll be no Satan, no sin. Right? If you want to go to the other place, that's up to you. But all the things in this world that are brought to us that are not good, like sickness, like things like cancer, things like divorce, things like, just think of anything bad. Even our evil minds. They're brought to you by Satan and sin. Amen? There'll be none of that. Oh, Revelation 22:14. Let's review that. Blessed are they that do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life, and may enter through the gates into the city. This tree symbolizes Christ himself. It's a real tree, but it's more heavenly, more spiritual. It's more than which grows on earth. The tree is laden with fruit, 12 kinds. It has a monthly harvest. Its leaves are for the healing of the nations, and it is the bread of life. The hidden manna. All right, let's talk about the blessed ones here. It starts out with the blessed, all those who do his commandments, right? It's God who calls them blessed. God calls you blessed. That's it. That's wonderful. That's what we want. That's what we strive for, right? You can have someone else call you blessed. Oh, you're blessed. But you know what? When God says it, blammo, that's it. Right? Emphasis, right? So God calls them blessed. Throughout this book, the word occurs many times. Okay, so if we want to be blessed, we should take a look at that word. Blessed is he who reads Scripture. Blessed is he who watches. Blessed are the dead who die in the Lord. In our text, let's notice the 3 points of being blessed. Blessings, right? Number 1. In our Scripture, blessed. Let's see. Number 1, they keep his commandments. Right? This should remind us of the 119th Psalm. It reminds us of the blessedness for which David rejoiced. Right? In keeping of God's commandments, there are great reward and great peace. We're called by God. We're forgiven. It is to a life of this kind that we are called. Called, forgiven, blessed. They have a right to the tree of life. We have a right to it, but not by something that we earned, only by grace. But yet, it is still a right. Something which we can claim. This pardon is simply in believing, but our reward is with good works. We'll actually get crowns of glory for our works. And we'll be so happy when we're in heaven, we'll throw everything to Christ. Right? Keeping the commandments and its fruits is no more inconsistent with the free gift of salvation. Holiness, without no man can see the Lord. The Lord says, be holy as I am holy. Right? And we should know the Lord's, the Beatitudes, right? Which God says, blessed are, right? Blessed are the ones, right? The orphans, right? Remember that? That sermon? Okay. Think a little bit of another thing. There'll be no flaming sword to keep us out of paradise for believers. All open and free to feed on that tree forever, and in feeding find ourselves nourished and invigorated in every capacity that God has in store for us. See, sometimes we get so caught up in everyday life. I gotta do this, I gotta do that. You get up, the alarm goes off, right? I don't know if you're early or late. Something happens, you know, you can't find your socks or your shoe or something, right? Maybe I went out 2 days ago to start my car, right? And I was gonna take the van. Click. That was after I put everything in. I started it, right? It started up. I put my, you know, because I work outside, so I got to put like all my rain gear, my boots, right? My lunch, because I'm out in the toolies. And I get back out there, click. So then, after it went click, right? What happens? I turn the key off and the lights won't go off. So I'm like, okay, so now the car's going to sit here all day with the interior lights on. The battery will be dead as a doornail. So, of course, I didn't have any lights. It was out, you know, from the house. So I take out the toolbox and I'm trying to disconnect the battery. Total pitch black. And then I feel like going back to the house and getting a flashlight. But you know what I mean? You get these little bumps in the road, right? In heaven, there's no death, no disease, no weakness, no weariness, and life and health forever. Even when we're not sick, sometimes we get concerned about it, right? Get a little, uh-oh, what's that? Where you sneeze 3 times and you're thinking, uh-oh, here it comes, right? They shall enter through the gates into the city. They're blessed in 3 ways. As doers of the commandments are partakers of the tree of life, as triumphant conquerors entering into the possession into the gates of the city. This city, if you're a believer and you hang on to the end, will be your city. Its name is New Jerusalem. It's not made for angels, they can enter, but it's made for men and women. Amen? Amen. God has built it for you, and He's not ashamed to be called your God in it. The fire in which the unrighteous are cast is not prepared for anyone who's redeemed. Your citizenship is in heaven. Although we'll have to wait until the Lord returns in glory to go there. Right? This as Adam's paradise, right? As paradise was Adam's garden, the New Jerusalem is our city. They shall enter the gates into it. We're not going to have to climb over a wall. We're not going to have to sneak in. We're not going to have to walk around and blow the trumpet so the walls will fall down like in Jericho. Right? Our Lord, the King of Glory, will invite us in. I'm about done. Wow, I got one more page. This is what's on it. I've made a new Reader's Resolution. I'm not going to keep you long, church. Because I think after a certain amount of time, everybody's eyes just roll up anyway. Right? I know in Africa they say they have these revivals that go on for days and days and days. Well, those people walk, 40 miles to get there. They're not going to go back for a while, so they need a good dose, right? Amen? Blessed are those who do His commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life. Right? It's not easy, but we can do it with God's power, right? So in closing, let's look at Revelation 22 and 11. Take a look at it. I'll give you a minute. I'm even waiting longer than a New York meeting on this one. That's like 7 seconds. Revelation 22 and 11 reads, He that is unjust, let him be unjust still. And he which is filthy, let him be filthy still. And he that is righteous, let him be righteous still. And he that is holy, let him be holy still. That's the message tonight. Thank you for the time before you. God bless you.